Hello, welcome to Honest Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. I'm joined today by the Twitch chat, a wonderful group of individuals who you can join 11 a.m. till 3 p.m. on twitch.tv/HonestWargamer. Today we're going to be looking at the Ossiarch Bonereapers update, which you can find in White Dwarf. Okay, Rob, what the hell do you mean? White Dwarf is an in-print publication, a physical magazine publication in 2022. I know, wild. Absolutely unheard of pretty much nowadays. I guess this is stored next to like Train Monthly or other exciting magazines, right? So you get an update. Now, there have been several updates in these White Dwarfs. Some of them do not make it over to the Warhammer Age of Sigmar app, which is very confusing. So that data for data safety, or that's not the word, validity, is actually pretty hard to track down. There's been a Seraphon update, there's been a Gargants update, there's been a Slaves to Darkness update. There has been, I think that might be all of them, but I will track down all of them and I'll include them in the show's notes below. I may also try and put a blog up on the honestwargamer.com so you can check them out. Anyway, Ossiarch Bonereapers, Bonereapers? Okay. Ossiarch Bonereapers have got an update, right? And it's in this upcoming White Dwarf. So you can buy it if you are an Ossiarch Bonereapers player, okay? Now, are these legal in match play? That's a really great question. Most TOs will probably say yes, but I actually don't think TOs have made much of a decision about them. They include, normally, updates for your battle traits, and sometimes they include, they also definitely always include grand strategies and also battle tactics. These things are all really important in-game. If you're playing in your local game with your friends, it's just a nice little update. If you're playing at tournaments, it's something you should really be conscious of when you're playing against the Ossiarch Bonereapers. Okay, so let's just take a quick look at them. The first couple of pages talk about the allegiance abilities, and really, this just clears up the relentless discipline points, how it's generated, and how they can be applied. So those are the first two pages, which is not super important. They do gain access to some new command abilities. Ossiarch Bonereapers, because they don't use command points, they actually use something called RDP, relentless discipline points, are pretty important. That's their way of using CP, so that's how they do command abilities and other stuff for their army. They also, unlike other armies, are able to do multiple of the same command ability using their RDP, or use RDP as command abilities or command points, but it's not command points. And importantly, that means they can't use core command abilities. So they can't use reroll charges, they can't use +1 save, they can't use all-out attack, they can't use all-out defense, which is pretty impactful for them as an army, which is why if you were planning on getting into Age of Sigmar, Ossiarch Bonereapers isn't the army that I would personally start with at all, right? So for the Ossiarch Bonereapers, they've got two new command abilities. They've got Reknit constructs, which allows you to heal up to D3 wounds allocated to a unit, which will also include returning D3 slain models to a unit, as long as that unit is outside of 3 inches, which brings it in line with things like rally, and that unit hasn't moved, which is actually pretty impactful and makes the ability for this to happen pretty low. It does key into a battle tactic in a bit, but so you'll spend 1 RDP and then you'll be able to basically heal D3 into a unit. There's already a lot of healing inside this book anyway. That D3 isn't much, you can't move, that's pretty huge because you want to fight, you don't tend to have lots of units that are going to shoot, you got the crawler, but most of it you're going to want to probably be moving, and because you can't do it within 3 inches, you're already going to be locked in combat, so not very effective either there. So not great, truthfully. And then you've got unflinching coordination. So this allows you to strike at the same time, so if you have a hero, and you're within range to use this command ability, don't forget, if you're general, it's going to be 18 inches. If it's a totem, it's 18 inches. If it's just a hero, it's going to be 12 inches. Wholly within 12, it allows you to strike at the same time as another unit. Now, it can't be another hero, so effectively, a on-foot character or Arcan, let's say he's not, it could be any of the heroes. If they're wholly within 12 or 18 inches of, let's say, Mortek Guard, they'll be able to fight at the same time as you fight. It's not that strong because most of your characters you don't really want to be fighting. Maybe if you've got Catacross on the board and you want to be fighting, you get to go twice. Seems okay. It's not terrible. It's not great either. We see this a lot. It's actually been pretty common in a lot of books for a lot of years. Mainly Khorne have had access to something like this for a long time. But because of how you charge in and how your opponent how you charge in and how you move characters around, you generally don't tend to see this. Actually, in the new Fire Slayers model that's coming out in the Fury of the Deep box, has got something very similar, and actually, as does the Thrall Master, all of which are kind of useful in the right situation, but they're on small characters that are easily killable by shooting, so generally you tend to see them as much. Okay. So that's what the command abilities are, and they've cleared up relentless discipline points and how they're used in Age of Sigmar 3. It's kind of like an FAQ, but it's in a magazine that you buy. And then they've got some new battle traits. Specifically, they've got 2 new heroic actions. One of them, Relentless Leadership, allows you to get a CP for just gets you a CP, which is an RDP. Every CP is an RDP. So you get 1 free RDP as a heroic action. Fine. Whatever. Or your other one, which probably is the one that people are going to talk about most, is Necromantic Mastery, which allows you to pick a Mortisan, keyword Mortisan, character, so that would be a caster, and it allows you to not auto cast a spell, it allows you to cast a spell, but it can't be unbound, which means your opponent doesn't have the opportunity to try to unbind it. Okay, you still have to successfully cast the spell, but you're probably going to see this used often on a Mystic Shield. Cast a Mystic Shield, which is really, really important to an Ossiarch Bonereapers army. They're going to cast it, and then you can't unbind it. How do people feel about this? This is a great question. Some people aren't going to enjoy seeing more non-interactive ways of something happening. Like, I definitely do something, and you can't stop me doing it. Generally tends to be something people don't like. It's quite often, we talk about this a lot on the show, and we have talked about this loads, people like interactivity. People like people like engaging with their opponent, not having something where you can't engage. It feels weird. So there you go. So those are the new heroic actions. One of them is pretty important. You also get inside these, you also get grand strategies, and you also get battle tactics. Bum, 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 bum. Now, the grand strategy for this is unrelenting efficiency, and you have to keep either a Death Riders or a Mortek Guard unit at full wounds. Like, it can't have any dead models in it at the end, and you score a battle tactic. It's a terrible grand strategy. It's a terrible grand strategy, and you're never going to take it. Flawless executions are the battle tactics for these guys, and 2 of them are super easy. One is Trample the Defiant, which is perform a successful charge with Cavalous Death Riders. That'll gain you 2 victory points. Super easy to do because you could just be right next to the unit, basically. So that's a really easy one. The other one ties into the command ability we talked about earlier, which is if you heal 2 units using the command ability from previously, where you heal D3, then you also complete that battle tactic. That's also very easy to do, which is pretty wild. And then finally, the Tide Demands is if you kill a hero or monster, you gain 2 victory points. And then if you do it with the Gothizzar Harvester, you gain an additional 1. Overall, they're very, very easy to achieve. And it's a really great question about how we, as players, or even as tournament goers, or as your local players, how we're going to deal with that. Like, next time you play against an Ossiarch Bonereapers player, you could say to your opponent, hey, you're using the White Dwarf battle tactics. Like, is that something I need to be aware of to try and stop you doing those? Similarly, you're at a tournament, you need to ask the TO, are they in effect? Are they not in effect? You know, or if you're an Ossiarch Bonereapers player, I'm going to be using these just so you know. Because your opponent, if they're not interested in the army, probably doesn't even know about them, which is pretty interesting. So something to be conscious of, because that could lead to like a gotcha moment, which I'm not a huge fan of personally. I would prefer these to. I don't think these also get put into the app, which is really important. So you guys need to be aware of that also. Overall, though, it's kind of like a mild update for Ossiarch Bonereapers. Not particularly strong, not particularly powerful, but I guess it's got some nice ways to score victory points, which is a big boost for the army. And it's got an an unbindable spell, which is good. I don't know. The Twitch chat have had their say. They seem generally unimpressed. It's time for you guys to have your say in the comments below. Thanks for listening to Honest Wargamer. See you guys soon.